Hello, everyone. Welcome. Gonna get this show started here in a couple of minutes. We got Steve Long in the house, so get ready for that one. Let's see here. Let's do this, shall we? There we go. Hope everyone is doing well out there. Happy Friday. We made it. It's the weekend. Just want to say hello to everybody. First of all, East Coast Tina, thank you so much for being here. Lord Ludacris, what is shaking? Really looking forward to this conversation. So am I. William Catalano was wondering where you been. Man, it's been busy. It's been really busy. Yeah, been in Austin, Texas, shot some sketches with the old UFO Garage Boys, did a show out there with my sketch team from Los Angeles, had another show just this Wednesday that I was prepping for all week, had an audition, so it's been busy and I've been working, so that's where I've been, William. It's been good. Hello, everyone. Happy 4th, says Brandon Roberts. UFO John Doe. Erica Luke's on the big screen and Lou on the iPhone. Sorry, Erica is easier on the eyes. 100% agree with that. How could I argue that? B. Baker, what's shaking? Steve Long. Damn it. I didn't know I was stepping on the toe of Erica Luke's, so please send her my love if you're watching us both. Chris Johansson. Hey, Baker. Hey, Chris Johansson. That's Bad Kitty. Happy Friday. UAP Chinese balloon lover. No camera yet. I understand. There's no camera yet. That's on purpose. I'm just talking to you, the people. Being very mysterious right now. Got a new haircut to reveal. It's been a while since I've done a show. Also, got to share the link. Guys, if you haven't shared the show, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Share the show. It does a world of good, and it's 100% free. 100%. Now, don't retweet what I just tweet. Share your own. Make your own post. Look at this, people. Check this out. Check this out. Hey, people. That's actually, I think that's, hey, people. Check this out. We are live. Hell yeah. There we go. Right? Is that the right one? Just make sure. Yeah, that's definitely the right one. Definitely the right link. All right. Let's say hello for real. What's up, people? Welcome. Oh, man. I'm a little choppy. A little choppy on the first show back. Hopefully it'll clear up. Chris Johansson, Black Vault put up a good update video today. I have not been able to watch it, guys. I've barely touched on the news that's come in. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit today with Steve Long. But before we do, like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. If you've done all of those things, consider Patreon if you haven't done that. If you have, God bless you. If you're a member, if you're have a membership here on YouTube, God bless you. Thank you guys so much for the support. Truly appreciate it. All right. Let's get started with today's show, shall we? I don't even know where to start. Steve Long is a UFO researcher. He's really well known in the Twitterverse. One of those just really logical thinkers. And if you say you just listen or read what he's saying, it's usually really logical, and it adds a lot of nuance to the discussion of this whole UFO mystery, if we even want to call it that at this point. I feel like in a lot of ways the answer's staring us right in the face, but nobody wants to hear my opinion. So let's bring on our guest, shall we? Mr. Steve Long. What is shaking, Steve? Let me unmute you. There you go. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, Lou? Thanks for having me tonight.
Absolute pleasure. I'm gonna boost up your audio again, just because I had the music going.
No
Yeah, man.
problem.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really, I appreciate it. I'm excited about this.
I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know for a little while there, we were on the opposite sides, opposite ends of the conversation. And
Sorry
I
about
know
that.
that.
Let me just go ahead and apologize right off the bat. Must have been obnoxious dealing with me, but I hope I was never
No,
rude, or maybe I was, or
no,
condescending.
no. I wouldn't say personally to me that you
Yeah.
were ever rude or too condescending. In fact, I mean, I think that the conversations, the very few that we may have had, I could identify with, having been down that road myself, and having been in that position, not obviously not as publicly as you were going through yours, but I could understand where you were coming from. And there's a lot of identity and history and just a lot of personal stuff wrapped up in this topic, people's belief in this topic and their interest in this topic. Often there's a personal sighting or experience somehow involved that may have even began their interest to begin with. So there's just a lot of personal stuff wrapped up there that makes it really hard to have, I think, a conversation between the two ends. I think there's really two different conversations going on a lot of the times, and unfortunately, there's just not a lot of middle ground there between the two, because one is, rooted in a belief somewhere, somehow, something that's not tangible, objectively conclusive evidence isn't present for some of the conversation that they're having. And that makes it hard for those of us that are having a strictly scientific method based conversation that's trying to adhere to the standards of evidence that's set forth by the professional research community and the scientific community. So I could certainly understand that. I'm really excited to have the conversation with you now, as I always am, when people grow and learn and find more information out. It's really an exciting thing. So thanks for having me.
No, man, it's yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear. I mean, at least when I guess I was pro narrative, and just to be clear, I mean, like I still believe, like I still have a hard time letting go of parts of the belief just because of what I saw. It's really difficult. I still struggle with it. And I think, I mean,
Sure.
it's funny, and I'll just go ahead and reveal this just because I don't think he would mind. But last night, Tommy Zito reached out to me and was like, dude, I didn't mean to get into this like little Twitter spat with you, essentially. And I was like, bro, let's talk. Let's talk face to face, And we had a good conversation, and he had to cut it short because he's going on a vacation with his family. But it was, like I always try to give that opportunity to people to be like, all right, let's talk about this face to face. Like, because I think I've always said Twitter's the worst place to try and have nuanced discussion, because without this kind of interaction it's really just a one-dimensional way to communicate, and I think a lot is lost in translation when you're communicating on Twitter. And it was good, unfortunately we didn't get to work through a lot of the stuff because again we didn't have a super long conversation, but the idea that like we were just meeting, just talking to one another, we immediately were like, dude, I know you're not a shithead. Same thing to me, like, what's going on here? Like, why are we mad at each other? Like, let's discuss this and rationally talk this out. And even if we disagree at the end of this conversation, at least we can have a respect for each other. And I'm always open to anybody believing whatever they want, but there is a part of that that is difficult to just accept, because it goes beyond just, well, this is my belief and I'd like you to respect it. It's like, this is my belief and everyone needs to know and everyone needs to participate and everyone needs to believe, and we need to devote dollars and senatorial time that could be used, for a billion other things that are. And even at the highest moments, I was like, there are other things that you could be calling for as well. And a part of the big phone home was not only getting people to call about the UAP thing, but showing people how to interact with their government and ask for the things that they want. Like, that's something that everyone should do, whether it be UFOs or any issue that you find important. So, that's it's nice to hear that, it never got to that point. Because I've had so many interactions on Twitter, so I'm always like, oh, man, I hope I never, and I always lead with an apology, like, hey, I'm sorry if I was obnoxious, because I know, like, when I was arguing for the pro side of these viewpoints, I think a lot of the things I hung on to were the credibility, or the facade of credibility. Now that I see it, this idea of, like, respect veterans, the idea that how can these highly trained pilots be wrong? How could you not consider this audio that comes with their testimony? Like, it's so compelling. And then you meet some of these people in person, face to face, handshake, like, and that, I think, is definitely why I was hanging on to that belief system a lot harder than I realized, and so, yeah, like, I think it's folks like you and folks like John Greenwald and folks like Stephen Greenstreet and Keith Clore and Ratherby Squidding, who was on the show, and Michael Mataluni and even Jane and Jazz and McGowan, and, like, rationally talking about these things for 2 years and then hitting the experience that we hit with the players in the game. It was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, this is fucked up. Like, all of these things, like, what's to what ends, then your mind starts racing and you start really questioning things. But yeah, man, I mean, like, I'm thankful for folks like you.
Thank you, Lou. Really, I appreciate that. And likewise, I'm thankful for the people that were here before me, and the other people, people that you mentioned that are very public in the topic and have devoted, years and a lot of time, and a lot of cases, a lot of money.
And by the way, I forgot Erica Lukes. in that, like, I mean, especially the way me and Erica Luke started out. I had to throw that out there, because what you just said reminded me of her. Go ahead.
I was going to touch on when you went on to Erica's show, actually, because I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I thought that I know that you guys had you were talking about the differences that, it can easily happen over Twitter, where you can have a long form conversation and talk things out. And I know that you guys had something, where you thought that there was a problem there that shouldn't have been there, that you guys weren't seeing eye to eye, or that there was a conversation that wasn't being able to be allowed to happen. And you got in touch with her and you went on her show and you had a conversation. And although at the time you were still inside of the belief spectrum of your journey, and you were still investing a lot of time and energy and trust into the popular names of the topic and Lou Elizondo and whatnot, you still went on to have a real human conversation with her to try and find where you have similarities and what the differences are, and if they could be resolved, and what you could see eye to eye on, and just to have a progressive conversation. I thought that was very cool. You don't see that happen a lot, and I think that it would probably happen a lot more if we were able to have more long form conversations. Instead, I think that the nature of Twitter is so reactionary and short, and it's all about the gotcha and the attention, that I think it stops that from happening. But I thought it was very cool that you kind of reached out to bridge that gap at the time.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, I mean, again, like the philosophy is like, well, how can I sit here and ask people to come and join me on under this tent and find the one common thing we agree on and blast them on Twitter for a stupid mistake they made? You know, it's like I'd rather deal with that privately behind, and that's what I did for 2 years behind the scenes. Like for 2.5 years, like I did stuff like that nobody knew about. Where and sometimes behind the scenes, like especially when I gave people multiple chances over and over and over again, and they kept just showing me like they were not good people. And like I just snapped privately. I'd be like, you know what, you can go fuck yourself. How many times are you gonna stab me in the back and I gotta hear the same thing when you come back to me when I approach you on this stuff, you know? And it's but yeah, I mean, that was like part of the philosophy, was like being able to try and take care of these things behind the scenes and get people to just put away their bullshit and focus on what was happening right in front of us. Or at least that's what I had thought, you know, like that was the idea of it. Because again, like, even if you think this is bullshit, we haven't had an opportunity like this in 80 years, 70 years to really legislatively at least try and get to the bottom of this, even though I knew realistically in the back of my mind, like, okay, you're asking the government to reveal some of the deepest secrets, if they even exist. You know, if not our tech, then their tech. I mean, like, which one are they more likely to tell us about? You know, if both of them existed, let's say, like, it's probably neither. And this, you know, so yeah, man, it was, I could go on forever about it, but yeah, I having those conversations with folks like Eric, I mean, that's how I am. That's who I am. And every other subculture that I deal in, other than UFOs. But for some reason, this subculture is really like just twisted everything that I've tried to do and say into this profit driven clicks and likes and attention narrative, when that's so ridiculous, when I literally gave all of that up to tell this side of the story. If I wanted to, I could have kept my mouth shut, could have kept just going and going, and I'd probably be friends with Lou Elizondo again right now if I really wanted to. If I really wanted to, I could have mended that bridge, but God, that would have been gross. It would have been gross. It would have felt terrible. Terrible. And there's going to be, I think, more things coming to the surface about things that this guy's done behind the scenes. I mean, time reveals all things like this. But yeah, sorry to go off on a tangent there, but yeah, I mean, thank you for noticing. I guess is my point.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with you. I think that as time goes on and as people like Lou Elizondo and others, you know, more people lose trust in them for various reasons. People that were like you involved behind the scenes with them. As time goes on, and I think, you know, more people have reason and feel comfortable enough or have a moment or a bunch of moments, just kind of bring them to the point where it's enough, right? Like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And I think that we will see more people come forward. You know, hopefully they'll be bringing, you know, conclusive evidence of the types of, you know, deception and you know, community you know, shaming and policing and just all the kind of things that go on behind the scene, and even just things that, you know, we've heard about so far, you know, not only from you but from people that have talked about, you know, the misrepresentations in the history show, and, you know, how they brought on, you know, government and ex-government employees and had meetings with them, and then misrepresented the nature of those meetings, you know, on national television and to us. And I think that these things, you know, they're very personal, right? And the things that you went through, they're very personal. And it's certainly not something that's easy. And I'm sure that you easily could have just let it go and walked away and moved on. And I commend you, you know, big kudos for sticking around, you know, to see, you know, I heard you say it before, you know, to try and right some of what you felt like were the wrongs of the past couple years, where you may have fell short, or maybe platformed something that you maybe now regret, or that you wish you had approached differently. And I think that that's very that speaks a lot to your character, that you're here to give it a second go after very publicly again. And it's really important, I think, that people like you and even people that are not doing it publicly, I think it's really important that they do that. And again, it's very, I can understand why people will want to move on and do other things with their lives and have a bad taste in their mouth. Sometimes there comes a point, right? And the magic is gone.
Yeah.
But it's important for those who are trying to get a clearer picture of what's going on, that people like you who have put in the hard work and put in the experience to get a real clear picture, right? Share some of that so that those of us coming up behind, wet behind the ears, can try and get a more clear picture ourselves. And like I said, I'm sure that more people will be coming out in the future, but it's a very personal thing. And oftentimes I think that there has to be something that's equally personal, personally effective, so to speak, to kind of force that change. It's very easy as humans to keep doing what's comfortable and what we really want to be. So yeah, big kudos for that, man. Seriously. And yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I told Tommy Zito last night, and in it my belief system. I told him, just imagine if your belief was shot in the face right in front of you with a 12 gauge shotgun, and now you're sitting here watching it bleed to death, like, and you're tied up. There's nothing you can do. It's like you have to take it. Like it's so difficult that like now my tolerance for it is low to zero. Low to zero now. Like
Yeah, but
it's swung the pendulum so hard the other way. I'm sure that's not good. Like I'm sure I'm missing some things with that sort of mindset, but I feel like I'm not interested in ever getting duped again. Like that's who's interested in getting duped again, especially if you feel like you're a person who, you know, like you don't feel like you get duped, like you're not,
right, right.
and of course, like even the most intelligent people end up in cults. I mean, look at Scientology. There's a lot of
Yeah.
intelligent people within that cult system. There's a lot of intelligent people within this UFO cult system. Really intelligent people. But it's just it borderlines into the realm of mad scientists or kooks, like genuine kooks. Or what's the word I'm looking for?
Absolutely.
Like a
I mean,
scientific, like just they just go off a deep end, and to where their colleagues are even like, yeah, man, I can't follow this. Like, this is not making any sense, but it's just interesting that some of the smartest people in this conversation, working for some of those most prestigious universities our land has to offer, and the university's not really holding a fire to the feet of the things that these people are saying. And it's like, why? That's just interesting. It's interesting that's not happening. And then of course that gets your mind thinking about other conspiratorial things. It could be just as simple as Stanford's just not paying attention. But it's just
yeah, I mean,
it's wild.
it is. And I think that at the core of it, right, like there's a lot of just basic things that aren't talked about that I probably go in, and I can't speak for, Stanford, of course, but just like, human nature and corporate nature. And, we have freedom of speech in America, and we have freedom of belief, and you can't, fire people for that. Talk about whether it's Gary Nolan at, a prestigious college, or David Grutch, in the government. People are allowed to have their beliefs. They can't be persecuted for that, right? There's all kinds of legal things that are in place to keep that from happening. But certainly, there people do have beliefs, no matter no matter what, no matter how educated you are, no matter how smart you are or experienced, we're human beings. We have fallibilities, we have human nature, and there's all kinds of things that I'm prone to being prone to believing, or prone to wanting to happen, or prone to just being open to, by the nature of who I am and my personality. And that's why the scientific evidence standards, the scientific method, that's why these things are so important, right? Because they essentially keep us grounded, because none of us are above that fallibility, right? And it's so important, if you are trying to get a true objective picture on what the facts are, it's so important that those evidence standards exist and that we abide by them, because they do keep us, again, from falling victim to our fallibilities,
What do you think, for people getting into this conversation, or that really are looking for genuine answers? I guess let me ask you this before I ask that. Do you think there is something to this? Do you think that all of these eyewitnesses are mistaken? They're just getting it wrong? Um, or is it like Gary Nolan suggests? Is it some sort of adult autism or schizophrenia, where it's the brain may have parts of those characteristics to those disabilities, and that's what's causing these visions? Do you think it's there's nothing to it? Like, what's your belief? If there is a belief there on this?
Do I think that there is something beyond, you know, the understanding that we typically have of the unit? Do I think that there's aliens visiting here from another planet or another dimension, something like that? No, I have not seen any evidence that would give me enough cause to believe that. I think that there's a whole host of things that are going on, human issues, sociological issues, and each case and each claimant needs to be addressed and judged on their own merits. And a lot of times, the phenomena, it's like such a huge term, and it just kind of combines everything together that's mysterious and anomalous, and it kind
Right.
of puts this package around it, that it's one entity, that it's all related, um, and I mean, sure, everything's all related if you get wide enough, but really speaking, everything has to be taken on its own merits and on its own situation. um, and I think that people, yeah. So I don't think that anything like aliens are visiting us from anywhere or anything like that. But there's certainly good reason for people. A lot of times I think when people are starting to become more skeptical, there's kind of a transition, I think, from being very open to the aliens and the ultra terrestrial kind of thing, to becoming kind of skeptical and going to the very opposite end of the spectrum, and kind of everything's part of a government cover up or part of a larger plan, right? It's still part of like a big, larger picture. Um, and again, these are like very human things that we do. We look for patterns, right? We look for things that we can identify and make sense out of things. And there's definitely I think a progression, that and a cycle kind of that people go through, an arc, so to speak. Um, and for me, I did have a sighting when I was a kid in the 90s. I saw a black triangle floating not 100 feet off of the ground, moving, very slowly just above the trees. And to this day, I don't know what that was, but certainly as a child, being 12 years old in the 90s, having grown up, in America with Independence Day and Unsolved Mysteries and all that stuff, like as soon as I saw it, I assumed that that was, an alien craft, whether it was being flown by aliens or it was back engineered by the government and being flown by them. That's just what I assumed, because that's what I had already heard. I was already preconditioned to making that suspicion.
Right.
And it certainly was something that got me interested in the topic. And I've had varying levels of interest since, coming back, really in full force since the 2017 New York Times article, to really try and get a true look on things. And that's when I had more of a different perspective on a lot of the things that I had grown up just taking at face value, and the people and high ranking individuals that I had accepted their words at face value. Um, and to this day, I don't know what I saw. That's a big part of probably why I'm here and why I'm
Yeah.
interested in this topic, right? But I certainly now have to give host to a whole spectrum of answers that it could be, right? And it could be an alien ship from somewhere, right? But higher up on the level of probabilities, there's other things that we must have to be able to admit it could be, right?
Right.
And this is just me, my personal sighting. I'm not trying to speak for everyone. Um, but I have to even remain open to the possibility that it never even happened, right? That it's a
Right.
false memory or whatever. So long ago, I have no proof of it. I don't believe that that's the case, but I can't say that it is not possible. It definitely happened. I can't say that.
Yeah.
Also, the possibility that it's some type of triangular shaped blimp or dirigible, right? That is a possibility. So, no, to answer your question, I don't think that something is going on that is defined in the way that we call the phenomena today. And that's if people do, that's fine. I'm not here to change anybody's beliefs. I'm just here to talk about what the evidence is. I'm objectively looking for what the verifiable facts are so that I can get a more clear understanding of the topic and also what happened maybe that night. And that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. And I understand that people have beliefs and I'm not trying to change them. But unfortunately, this isn't really a conversation about what the possibilities of the universe are and whatnot. This is a very tangible conversation about, like you said, things that are very specific. Like there are entities coming here from somewhere, some things, and we need to do something about it. We need to spend money in Congress. We need to have hearings. We need to do things. We need to kickstart funding in private corporations and defense contracting, and we need to change legislation for national security. And like these are very tangible things being based upon very intangible allegations that we have no physical concrete proof for. And it gets very hard to have a conversation upon that. Again, having two different conversations, and we can certainly disagree. We should be able to disagree from time to time about what the evidence points to or what the evidence means. But we certainly can't be disagreeing at every turn on what is evidence, right? And what
Right.
is evidence is very clearly defined, again, by the professional research community, by the scientific community. And those are the standards that I try and stick to because that's what you're supposed to do, right? To avoid any of the pitfalls of human fallibility, like we talked about.
So then, for the person who's stuck in this rabbit hole, or maybe they don't realize that they're stuck in this rabbit hole. In a lot of ways, I thought I was, even in my show, like I thought with Rather and Michael and the different folks that cycled through the show, I thought we were being as down the middle as possible. Like I thought we were making believers question and debunkers wonder. Like that was sort of the idea. But as things started to unfold, I realized, oh my God, I was more on the wonder end of things. Like I really held on to that experience. And I think the difference between, and I don't know if this is the difference, but there's still one person I'm in contact with on that. And I know if I really wanted to, I might be able to find a few more people. And I still want to do this project because I'd be interested to know, like what the adults at that party remember, if they even remember it. Is it a false memory? Is it? But okay, back to the question is, what do you recommend to the people that did what I did, who thought maybe they were not leaning on that belief system? Like, what do you recommend to, I guess, look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, does this make sense? Like, are there rules? Are there steps that maybe you could recommend to someone that might be in that rabbit hole and prop themselves out of it if they followed one of your steps? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I don't mean to call them steps, but like logical steps to get you at thinking in a different way, I guess.
Yeah. Again, that's, I mean, a very fair question, but that if unfortunately if there was an easy answer, I'm sure that there would be a lot less of a problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Again, as human beings, we have good intentions, and we generally believe in what we're doing, and we think that the ideas that we have and the beliefs that we have are really well founded. And again, that's what makes it so hard to see outside of that fallibility. But I guess the first place that I would suggest people starting with, if they were really trying to be open and objective, is to just learn about the very basics of scientific and just evidence standards, research evidence standards, right? And even just logical fallacies, and just the basic things to look for when you're trying to assess what is valid evidence, right? And essentially that comes down to replicability or verifiability, right? You can verify it somehow. Um, and that's just such a key. And if you can't, right, it's not saying that the claim is untrue. It's just saying that we can't prove that it is true. And I know a lot of times, and I saw you used it in today's title for the show. Probability over possibility is like a real important part of when I'm assessing things,
Right.
because I can easily be open to all the possibilities, but the probability is what's more important if I'm trying to find the verifiable truth or the objective truth. And a lot of times, it's not just a black and white yes or no kind of thing. There's a spectrum of possibilities
Yeah.
that the answer could be. And you asked me that question 5 minutes ago, and I kind of gave you a spectrum of an answer, because that's just how life is, right? It's often not very black and white. There's nuances, and there's very nooks and crannies and all kinds of things that go into and mitigate stuff. But it's really important, I think, to understand the logical fallacies and just what is the threshold of evidence and what is the claim and what's being provided to support that claim, right? And that's what I would suggest to people.
That's not bad. Um,
And also,
I think
if
that
I
helped. That
may,
was very helpful. Yeah, yeah, please.
I can remember when I was, a believer. I would often kind of just consume the stuff that was kind of going on at the time, the popular stuff, the stuff at the top of the topic, the most popular stories and lore, and I would just kind of go from each one to each one. But I would suggest to people, at the time, I would not read any type of skeptical or counter arguments to those stories or to those claims. It wouldn't even really dawn on me. And if I would see, say, a skeptic like Phil Klass or something on a UFO documentary or on TV, I would just kind of get like a gut reaction to like, oh, this guy, like, he's either a paid disinformant or he just doesn't know, because I know, like, I've seen it. I know,
Yeah.
I know what I saw, right?
Yeah.
Um, but when uh, a big part of becoming more open and more objective was reading deeper into each of those narratives and those stories, right? And a lot of that had to do with reading the skeptical interpretation, because the people that were just talking about the everyday kind of popular facts were all repeating each other, and they were all often very incorrect. It turned out they were often misrepresenting facts or just lying outright at times.
Yeah.
And so reading the skeptical assessments were really important to me. And what I started noticing that with the skeptical approaches, that they were backing up the things that they were saying. They were not just attacking, the person's claim or the claimant. They were specifically listing, the problems that they had, and then going through them, substantiating, if they didn't just say that, this person's wrong here, they said, this is why, and this is how you yourself can go and find out that for yourself. Here's a link to
Yeah.
it, right? Here's a citation, here's a footnote. These are things that just aren't presented with the popular claims and stories of today. And there's a reason for that often. So those are the things that I would suggest to people.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Was it you that shared? I can't remember a clip today. It's not. 1988 anymore, where you could just make a fucking claim and not get checked on it. Like, you can't just throw out triangle pyramids and expecting everyone to go, oh my God, these are so real. But it's weird that the mainstream media seems to do that. But like the internet, like when you put the data out there to be open sourced, it is the murder board that the internet is. I think in a lot of ways is really helpful, because I mean, just for example, this Skinwalker Ranch, like the object that's moving 3,600 miles per hour, and this is how we're pitching a TV show. And in 1 minute after that was posted, Mick West found wings flapping on the goddamn object. It was clearly a bug or a bird. And the part that's absolutely wild is that footage went through so many hands and eyes to make it to the final cut, and nobody zoomed in on that footage. Nobody. That's what you're telling us, History Channel. That's what you're telling us, Brandon Fugel, and every single member of the team, especially Travis Taylor. That's what you guys are telling us. Like, it's wild to how the internet murder boards it, but it still somehow is used as proof in sometimes really credible places. Like, again, the triangles. Like, my mom emailed me that, going, oh my God, like, did you see this? I'm like, Mom, they're drones. Like, it confuses people. Genuinely is confusing people. And it's not only confusing regular people, it's now confusing lawmakers, which, to be honest, are mostly just regular people. Corrupt, but they're still mostly regular people.
No,
so,
and
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on what you were saying there real quick. I mean, you know, I can totally relate. You know, you're talking about your mother and the triangles. And there is a point like where most, you know, people think like, well, you know, if it's gotten to this level, enough eyes have been on it, enough experts, like clearly this is what they're saying it is, right? Like it's not going to be a bug. Like these guys have 5 degrees from Harvard, right? Like, and that's again a complete fallacy, right? It's the argument of authority, and it's the cornerstone of ufology. It's literally what it's built upon, right? We never have any proof of the claims. We just have the credibility of the claimant, allegedly, you know, their credentials and what have you. But it is, and it's the triangle is a great example. You know, they were like all over the news and Fox, and like I remember
they're still
my
used
grandfather.
Now. Like,
Still. Because they're very convincing, right? They look like triangles. And we saw this happen back in 2017 with the 3 videos that, you know, Elizondo and Mellon brought out with the Times and TTSA. You know, it's some people are convinced by what they're seeing, right? And most people don't have any idea that what they're seeing is, you know, a representation of, it's not a picture, so to speak, right? And they're just thinking it's like black and white. Like there's all kinds of misperceptions that just go unchecked because it helps support the story. And a lot of people saw those things on Fox and they weren't thinking anything about aliens. They're just like, well, clearly it's, you know, Chinese drones and stuff like that. It's adversaries. And they just kind of went with that because that's what they're prone to always turning to, right? It's go ahead.
No. I think that's, you make a good point. I was also maybe going to add there to Steps, read Mick West's book, Escaping the Rabbit Hole. And also, I would say the one thing that really, I guess, was a big cold bucket of water to my reality was when stuff was getting really weird and really scary, especially when the threats were coming in through the live chats, and there were so many bots from Arabic and Russian countries. It was scary. I called my brother, And I was like, hey man, like I gotta tell you, try and encapsulate what's just happened to me. Just in case, I don't know, something bad happens. I have no idea. I don't know. But I have to tell someone in my family what's going on
Yeah.
because they have nobody has any clue what's going on. And I didn't feel safe, especially after that. That's why I quit the show.
No,
I talked to my
understandable.
brother and I started explaining to him, trying to encapsulate 2.5, 2 years of work and red flags and people involved and things I did and just.
Wow.
And he goes, dude, you know, because of course at the end of this, I'm like, is this making any sense to you? Because I feel like I'm sounding like a crazy person because I'm sure that's exactly what I sounded like because I was so frantic. He's like, look, I don't think that you're lying to me. He's like, it's very difficult for me to follow along what's happening because I don't know these people. I don't know the players of the game. I don't know who you're talking about and their relations to everything. I could tell. He's like, I've never ever in my life heard you sound like this, and you don't sound happy. So maybe walk away.
Yeah.
And that was the best advice I got, was to walk away from it. And I guess that's my point being, I would recommend if you find yourself surrounded by people that are saying the exact same things as you, and you find yourself getting upset anytime that is challenged, maybe go into your personal life and talk to the people that have no clue about this and tell them, and then see what they come back at you with. Because I have a feeling if they really care about you, they're going to give you their honest opinion and maybe where you should focus your attention. I think that's valuable. You know, talking to somebody outside of the rabbit hole, I think is really,
Absolutely.
really valuable. So, I mean, I just wanted to add those two things. I think that's worth saying.
Sure. Yeah, it's perspective, right? It's easy to lose perspective um, if you're not getting a broader sample of what that is. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So what do you? It's a loaded question because I mean, but what do you think is? Is there any way that we can convince this community of? I think a big problem is raising the bar, right? Like, what is evidence? Like, clearly
Mm.
defining that. How do we get folks to go, oh, triangles that could easily be drones and things that look like balloons just aren't good enough anymore? Like, at what point, or is there anything that we can do to
Well,
add a little more logic to some of these things? Are we even responsible for to do that? Like, do we have to do that? Should we
right.
even feel compelled to do that?
Well,
Like,
see, and great. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Are we? And I think that there's certainly something to be said for community stewardship, right? And I think that, I don't know what the answer is, but I imagine it would be pretty hard to get people to do that when they're being told by every mainstream UFO influencer and biggest name that, that evidence that isn't evidence is, when they're being told that, third hand witness testimony is evidence, that just a claim is evidence, that just a video is evidence, of what they're saying. There's like a whole push against mainstream science or even just the scientific method, right? It's, the phenomena is not able to be observed or replicated or verified by the scientific method. The scientific method is insufficient to
Mm.
deal with the phenomena. We need to change the scientific method. We need to change the evidence standards so that we can quantify the phenomena. And that's literally the definition of pseudoscience, right? When
Right.
you're changing the method to fit your theory. That's literally pseudoscience. Um, but a lot of these are very good questions, but I don't know what the answers are. I wish that I did. But a lot of it is people just want to believe, right? And there's a lot of so to speak, like innocent interested parties, I guess you could say. But there's also a huge contingent, again, the community stewards who are not being responsible stewards, who are not showing transparency and accountability, and who are misrepresenting things, right?
Yeah.
And when they are the loudest voice, I don't know how you could properly compete against that. And I think a lot of it just comes down to different types of people, also, right? There is an inherent person that's just very scrutinous, and there's also people who are just inherently very open, and it doesn't, they don't scrutinize much, it doesn't take much, and it might only be for certain things, or it might be for some things, all things, who knows. But there are different types of people, and I just don't know that there's any silver bullets, so to speak. I
Mm.
know that when we look at something like QAnon, right? Like you can see how all kinds of people would be kind of wrapped up into something like that, because they're already kind of predisposed to the messages that were the sidecars, so to speak, here. And I don't know how a lot of those people would have been convinced otherwise, because all the facts in the world wouldn't have really done it. So we could have pointed them to all kinds of things, and they would have had no problem discarding them, as we often see here in the UFO community, right? We can point out the things that Lou's lied about, the times that he's misrepresented things, but all of those are excused, right? Well, he had to, for
Right.
X reason. He had to lie because of this.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't really know what the answer is. I wish that I did. But for the people that are interested in really learning the truth, or trying to find the objective truth and the facts, and despite if that means it's things that they might not want to be the truth or the facts, that's kind of where I guess I try to devote my energy, or at least the conversations that I have and the things that I post, not necessarily are just for them, but I'm certainly putting it out there for people who are trying to take an objective approach, because again, I don't know what I would possibly do to change someone on their level of belief, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm here for too. So
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, and I think I've said this before, I feel anyway, the most relatable thing that I've seen is just like I always think of Leah Remini, the actress that was a Scientologist, and now she's devoted her life to exposing the Church of Scientology, and how a lot of other science, I mean, there's a whole crop of them on YouTube and in blogs that they escape the church, and all their entire mission becomes trying to be stewards for people coming out of the church. Like, okay, here's how
yeah,
you like here's how you enter society. You can stay in my place until you get a job, until until you can figure out how the world works because you've been in this bubble for so long. I mean, there's I don't
yeah.
there's no real blanket for me to give. I feel like this is more like it feels more like a band-aid I'm ripping off than a blanket I'm giving right now, if that makes sense. um but yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough, because I think that's what the objective kind of becomes for a lot of us, as we become more scrutinous, right? Like how do I transfer this? How do I try and help people become more objective and more skeptical, right? And that's a really good question. I know Mick West has all given interviews and written books to kind of help people do that, hey, give this to your family members, because it directly addresses things. A big part of it is like we feel when we're in those groups that we kind of feel oppressed in a way, right? Like there's the stigma, the UFO stigma. And a lot of that is in itself like the propagator, right? And there's so many people that are disingenuously pushing that as if it's a real thing, as if people are really being prosecuted or looked down upon for like having a UFO interest or belief, right? And it's just really not the case. I mean, I've grown up in this country for like 40 years now, and like I just can't really remember a time like that. Sure, it's fringe, you could say, but like not any time that it was like, oh, you believe in UFOs, like you're crazy, like I'm can't be friends with you, or you belong in a mental institution, or I can't employ you, or something like that. Like it's a very widely accepted thing, and it has been for a long time.
Right.
And that's why I think we see people at the highest levels of government and politicians and whatnot, they have these beliefs. They've grown up around that same type of culture with that same media. And again, these are all things to keep in mind when we are assessing and discerning the things that they're telling us.
Yeah, I think there is a stigma in that. I think like real pilots. I mean, I do know a pilot who's had an experience who, while he was flying as a Navy pilot, but nobody knows. But had a pretty wild experience that he told me about. Um, and of course, I tried to get him to come on the show, but he was not interested in that because he works for a major airline. Um, and I think there is a stigma that pilots that are employed, when they do see weird things, they tend not to report them. And I think that is because they've heard of these stories, whether they're true or not. Hey, if you still want to fly, don't say anything, don't put in the report. But now that
Right.
I think there is a genuine effort within the halls of Congress and within the FAA and flight safety organizations and pilots to say, hey, we need to start talking about the things that we're seeing in the sky, so therefore we can start classifying them and understanding exactly what they are. We don't, not because they're aliens, but because it genuinely is a flight safety issue. And we don't want you to be timid in reporting these things that you're seeing. I think out of all that, to me, is the best thing that's come out of this whole Lou
Yeah.
Elizondo, Christopher Mellon narrative. Is the idea that, okay, at least pilots can now have, there's a reporting system. And
Right.
if there is that 0.00000000001% that, oh my god, maybe it was anomalous, and we do have corroborating evidence, and two pilots saw it from two angles, and we have pictures of it in video from two angles, and science is genuinely taking it seriously. Like, that's the only way, if those things exist, that's the only way that I think we might even have a chance at possibly discovering something like that. So from
Yeah.
that aspect, I think it is good in that there, and I think, there is a stigma to it. Whether it's a justified stigma or not, I don't know. I think the Air Force in a lot of ways kind of created their own problem, because with that stigma, they obviously now have a big problem within the security apparatus, in that, because nobody's reporting these things, and they are making drones look weird on purpose, so that way they can infiltrate the most sensitive areas of our military training grounds and things like that. And when people look up, they go, oh shit, I'm not saying anything about that, I don't want anybody to think I'm fucking nuts. I think that is a genuine concern, but that's also a concern that was created by them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that those outcomes are good, and I think that we want pilots to be able to report the things that they see, whether they're anomalous or not, right? And we want to have an awareness, and especially in the day, today's age of adversarial drones and balloons and what have you, and even just air clutter and things that pose a safety risk. Yeah, I think it's all good things, absolutely. And I won't go so far to say there's no stigma, right? But I believe that the stigma, far more than, sure, we can talk about things that the government and the Air Force has done over, the past decades, but I think that the real stigma that people are always pointing to and talking about, it comes from the topic itself, right? It comes from the UFO documentaries over the years and the UFO movies, and the claims in all the popular UFO tropes of the evil government, and I got fired from my job, and
Mm,
I can understand pilots having been leery of reporting the UFOs that they may have seen, that being leery of making those reports. I could totally understand that, and I'm glad that we're now correcting that. But I think a lot of that doesn't come from countless cases of pilots being fired and not being allowed to fly anymore because they made a report of something they
right.
couldn't identify. I think it more comes from them having this inherent belief that if they report it, they will be acted upon. And everybody thinks that UFOs are crazy because that's what we always see. That's what we're always told, right? The
Almost like a
UFO
false
person is
stigma.
persecuted, right?
Yeah.
Right. And again, I think there is a level of stigma, but it literally comes from people like Skinwalker Ranch
Right.
and people making very crazy claims for decades that have no type of evidence. Of course there's going to be a stigma attached to that. Why wouldn't there be?
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what do you think's next in this saga here? Because now we're like, of course, the UFO believers are ramping up right now because they just got Grush, their new toy, and they're all playing with it, super shiny, and they love it, love it, love it. They love their brand new Grush toy. And here we're looking at it, we're like, Jesus, kid, you already broke this fucking thing. Like it's already tattered up, it's all scratched up. This has no value. Like you did you even save the box for the Grush? Did you even save the box? Did you save the packaging? No, they tossed it, um do you think we're going to get how many more Grushes are coming, do you think? Because it seems like they believe more are coming. There, of course, you've got News Nation that for some reason has only had one skeptic on out of all of the people that they bring onto that network to talk about this. You've got Nick Pope, you've got Jeremy Corbell, you've got Ryan Graves, you've got Ross Coulthart, and who else is reporting on this? I guess you could kind of count Sager and Jetty because they're owned by the same news corporation. And they're all pushing this pro narrative, clearly flawed narrative. And they only get snippets of the actual facts. Like,
Mm,
is this a perfect storm
mhm.
of believers, or is this a great perfect smokescreen for our tech?
I mean,
Is it both?
I would imagine that the no, I was gonna say, I imagine that the answer is probably a mixture of both, right?
Mm,
I'm sh- from everything that we can see, and all the verifiable evidence, and unless we're just going to assume that it's from the top down, a complete, government psyop or whatever, and they're all just lying. Um, it certainly seems like the case, as we've had many, many times over the decades, of a bunch of people that are, predisposed to having certain beliefs, and have gotten together and have coalesced, and they've convinced other people, and then they kind of add them to the team, and then they continue to go, and they're pushing it as far as they can. Now, does that mean that people inside of that also aren't using it as a means to financially profit and to have publicity and celebrity and ego? And does it not also mean that the government, having to respond somehow, always is, of course they're going to utilize anything they can as a smokescreen and utilize anything they can for deceptions and to further national security. So of course there's going to be that involvement. But from the top down complete psyop, again, that's just a bridge too far for me, just based on the evidence.
mm,
um, as far as what's next, Who knows? Whoever knows with this topic, what's next? But certainly, they keep telling us about more whistleblowers to come and stuff, and like, well,
We're
as
getting
far as I can
hearings.
see, yeah, and hearings, yeah. But of course, there's going to be more whistleblowers. I would think. Apparently, Arrow alone has talked to like dozens of people, and that was as of like 2 months ago.
Mm.
Congress has apparently been talking to people for like 2 years. We're being told. So, I mean, clearly there's other people out there. What they have to say, who knows? I have no reason to believe that they're presenting any type of conclusive evidence of the things that are being alleged because no one's ever done that. We have these kind of things all the time, but certainly there's more whistleblowers out there, or at least claimants, I think would be a more proper term for them. And yeah, more hearings too. Like, if people could have their way, absolutely they're going to have more hearings. I mean, especially, politicians, if they think that it's going to be something that's, positive, they're going to try and push for that. We have people like, Danny Sheehan and David Grutch
Mhm.
and Elizondo, others, have their own 501c, nonprofit company corporations that are trying to get
Yeah.
more hearings and to trying to further, the next step. And who knows how far they'll get. I would not be surprised if we did not have some type of hearing, just because Senator Gillibrand put the offer out there, of course saying I'll only do it if we'll have the cameras there. But I mean, the guy's been going on cameras all over town. Why wouldn't he
Mhm.
have cameras there? Like, he's not going to share anything that's classified
Right.
to the cameras for the whole world to see. So I don't think that he'll have a problem going before the cameras and saying the things that he's already said personally. So there probably would be another hearing involved. I would think. But again, none of the things that he's going to say are going to be classified, and that goes for no matter how far this gets. I would have to think that eventually it's going to get to the point. Congress wants answers, and people are saying things and making allegations, and it's going to get to the point where the government and the intelligence community, are met. They meet with Congress and are going to have to, reassure them that we don't have alien bodies and alien crafts, hidden. And the only way, I'm sure, that the politicians are going to want to see conclusive or supporting evidence of that to convince them, and that's going to be classified information. So that's going to
Yeah.
be stuff that we will never be able to see, at least not in the short term. So in the end, the politicians and the government will say, we don't have these things, we've never had them. Politicians will say, we've been assured of that. Some might say, they've assured us, but I still have my doubts, and play to that end. But, in the end, it's just going to be the cover up has continued. The whitewash has continued.
Right.
Arrow was just like Blue Book, and the cycles will continue just like they always have.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I
It's
think
it's
is the
it's a
future.
it's definitely feels familiar. That's for sure. I remember before I ended UCR, I went back and listened to a discussion of Stan Freeman, and I swear to God, I sounded just like him as far as like the things I was saying. Like, this is historical, it's bipartisan,
Mm,
it's for the first time in history we have a real shot to actually talk about this in a congressional way. Um, like, I was like, wow, I didn't even notice I was doing that. But yeah, it was a big like, oh, this is the exact same thing. This is the exact
mm,
same thing. And
mm.
Stan Freeman wasn't a dummy. He was a smart guy.
Yeah.
He did get duped, I think, by the the Majestic 12. It really the whole topic as a whole. But I mean, a genuine nuclear physicist that was valedictorian of his school, like, his bona fides actually match his claims. I think in a lot of ways, or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, no, I generally agree with everything that you're saying about Stanton. I think he was a nuclear engineer, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but the bottom line is he
Yeah,
hadn't worked in the nuclear
for a
industry
long
since,
time. Yeah,
yeah, since the 60s.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
He had been a full-time, full-fledged ufologist since 1970. And that's
yeah.
essentially being, an entertainer at his level,
Right, right,
So
right.
I do have plenty of things to say about Stanton, but I also think that he has done good work and he was a voice of reason at times. Sure.
I mean, I did love his dressing down of Jeremy Corbell. when they did debate. I thought he did a really excellent job of just highlighting how absurd all of these claims were, and how he had no bona fides, and comparing his education to Bob's education. I was like, you know, I loved it. I wish we had someone like that a little more. I believe, obviously, conversation instead of a one-dimensional tweet is a lot more helpful. But I think really the biggest, and I blame Art Bell, I blame Coast to Coast AM a lot for this, is this idea of we're not allowed to question any of these people. We're not allowed to question them because if you do, it's considered an insult. It's insulting. How dare you insult this guest coming on your show who had X experience or claims Y happened and this is 100% real, and you have to, it's almost like some movements that I've seen where you have to believe everything that this group of people says. Like, nobody's allowed to question them. What do you think is sort of that aspect of it?
Yeah, well, obviously, and there's a lot that goes. I just listened to Ezra Klein's interview with Leslie Kean, for instance.
Mm.
For the New York Times show that he does. I forget what it's called, but it might be the Ezra Klein show. In fact, I think it is.
Yeah, I missed
But
that. That just happened.
Yeah, that was like 3 days ago, I guess. He
Oh
talked to her.
gosh. Okay.
And overall, I thought it was a good interview, and that he did a good job trying to hold her to the questions that he was asking, because she really was, dancing around them to the point that he really would ask her the question sometimes 3 times. He would come back to the question because she would just not answer it. She would give a non-answer about something else, right?
Yeah.
But even in that, you could tell that there was a lot more that he could have said, that he could have pressed a lot harder, right? And that he could have called her. But there's like a level of professionalism, right? There's a level of even just being, personable, right? Like we're not supposed to kind of accost people, right? We're not supposed to make them uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And these people really, like Keane and others, play up to that, right? They capitalize on that and they milk it for all that they can, right? And you can understand it completely, 100%. I definitely agree that I wish that we had more open debates, I guess you could say, like that Stanton Friedman, Jeremy Corbell one. And again, a lot of times I see that kind of like hailed as kind of a skeptic versus believer debate, and I kind of that kind of bothers me because he's not a skeptical representation of the argument, Stanton Friedman, definitely. But I thought that he did do a good job of kind of holding them to the inaccuracies and the incorrect facts that they often try to dance around. But again, it didn't matter. None of the factual evidence that he presented, or the facts that they had that he showed and refuted to be completely wrong, that didn't really change anybody's mind, right? All those things were just forgiven, even to the point of, well, what, you never lied to get a chick? Right.
Yeah.
And like that's how it is. Like everything is forgiven for the greater cause, whatever that is for the individual, right? It could be getting all this stuff out of Congress, right? Or validating my sighting, right? And there's a lot of that. Unfortunately, I think that the way that people feel about, when they defend, say, Lou Elizondo, or defend the topic, they're essentially defending, oftentimes their sighting, their experience, what happened to them. Right. And it's really important to draw the line there that, especially when people are investigating or scrutinizing claims and claimants in the UFO topic and culture, like Lou Elizondo and David Grutch and others, that doesn't apply to people's individual sightings. That's not an attack of them or their beliefs, right? And it's really important to note that delineation there. But as much as I'd like to see more debates and conversations happening between two opposing sides, two leading, say, figures in the topic, or a leading figure being willing to go on to a show, and even if these were moderated, right, have a debate and what the evidence is, and what, really hash out these things in more of a long form format than just some Twitter, or what's often the case, and even worse, them just getting to present whatever they want in the format that they want, and any scrutiny is labeled as hate or pigs or what
Yeah.
have you. I would definitely like to see more debates, but again, it all comes back to the beginning of the conversation where I said this is two different conversations often, right? And I just don't know how productive they would be, other than for those who were looking for the objective facts, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, just for the audience, just everybody understands the context. The "you've never lied to a chick to get a date," or "you never lied to a chick" line was something Jeremy Corbell said to Stan Friedman in a rebuttal to a question. And I think, yeah, that encapsulates his entire presentation that day. It was like, "Oh, you never lied to the audience." What, you never lied to the audience? Just replace chick with audience, and it's literally his whole MO
Yes.
right there. Um,
Yes.
yeah, he's an absolute, like, I don't know what the antidote to someone like Jeremy Corbell is. I don't know what the antidote to someone like Linda Moulton Howe is. I don't know who is the person that can get the access to them that's actually going to ask them. I think Kurt Mungo got really close once with Linda Moulton Howe. That to me was like one of the best moments in ufology. And it shocks me that he still leans now into the woo after that conversation. Like, that grinds my gears a little bit. And that he's now interviewing the Stephen Greers. He's platforming some really wild ideas and some really wild people that are pushing things like, Nordic white beings and special DNA, and that has roots in like Aryan, propaganda. Like, I don't understand how these really smart people are sort of getting manipulated, or maybe it is the draw of the audience and the attention and the accolades, because I know that stuff's addictive. It was addictive for me. It was addictive for Green Street. Is it that? I mean, that seems like the most logical, the probability, right, over the possibility. But
I was
your
gonna
thoughts?
No, I was going to say, I think that you probably do understand it pretty well. In fact,
Mm,
when we get down to it, these people like, Kurt, like he's, this is, he's an influencer, right?
right.
He's doing entertainment, right? He's trying to get clicks and views, and he's monetized. And like, we need to start framing these people instead of just calling them, scientists and stuff. Like, I think we need to really recognize the celebrity factor,
Mm,
and the entertainment factor and the business factor that is really the prime reason for these people being in our face, right, and talking to us. And it's not like just out of a pure altruistic motivation. Like, these are very specific things that have to do with, money and ego and business plans. And and we should really need to frame everything that they're saying in that kind of context, right? And I think that you probably can understand and identify really well why people could continue to platform or give weight to or belief to things even after having been presented with evidence that should have led to a change of course, right?
yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be nefarious things. It can just be humanity, right? Like your human nature. There's something that's really tying you to that, right? And it's different
Yeah.
for everybody.
Well, Eventide says, Lou, Kurt is a lot earlier in this journey than you are too. He hasn't seen all the rabbit holes end up pointing to the same nonsense. And I think that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I've interacted with him quite a bit, and I've sent him some private messages that I don't know how he's ignored. He's just straight up ignored. Um, it's there to me. There is a point where you hit again. I talk about this fork in the road all the time, where you see the wrong things. You see them happening right in front of you, and you overlook it because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to upset the audience to call out the wrong thing that you see. And it's doing a real disservice to getting to the truth of the conversation, because we should be holding our heroes' feet to the fire on the claims that they're making. We shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be feeling like we're walking on eggshells. I know for sure that everyone who's ever wanted to ask real questions and has any sort of influence within the community, they don't ask those questions because they're afraid. They're afraid. And I mean, I think there's a lot, I don't want to call anybody out, but there's a lot of hosts that are afraid to get their hands a little dirty and possibly lose part of their subscription base. You know, it's wild to think that I'm the guy who gets accused for being in it for the clicks and super chat money. And I walked away from it. I literally walked away from it because I saw what was something going wrong, and I decided to say something about it. And
right.
I mean,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. No, that was done.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no rationality behind the theory that the skeptics or people that are going against the narrative are doing so for the monetary value. Like there is no viewership, there is no monetary value, there is no money in the skeptical side of the conversation as compared to the believer side, right? The other side of the conversation. That's where all the money is. That's where all the publicity is. That's where everyone is. Hardly anybody is coming here for the skeptical take. So that's always just a very disingenuous claim to level at people. But you can really understand, again, just to touch on what you were saying, and with Kurt Jamungal and others, like there is, even when you get to the point where you're noticing red flags and inconsistencies and stuff, who wants to lose everything, right? Who wants to be on the opposite side of the conversation than most other people? Who wants to be the outcast? Who wants that negativity? You don't want to lose the friendships that you've maybe had along the way, the contacts that you have, the access that you have, right? And also the business that you've grown, right? The profit that you might be generating from that. These are all things that come into play. And I'm sure for you there was a time when you had noticed red flags and inconsistencies, and you were having lots of doubts, right? But you still remained committed for one reason or another, or most likely, more often, a confluence of reasons, right? Yeah. And it's very understandable. It really is.
No, I think it is. I mean, obviously, it took. I think the reason why it took so long is because I was convinced that I was trying as down the middle as I could be. Again, like just that's what I thought I was doing, but I clearly wasn't. And I mean, I don't think I did a terrible job, but yeah, I mean, thankfully, like we had Rather there for every single show, and Rather was great because Rather also wants to believe this. Like, obviously, it would be so cool if this was real. God, we'd be kids in a candy store now. We could really have some fun, Like that's what we want. We want to have fun with this. Like that.
Absolutely,
there'd be no better news in the world if tomorrow Congress found evidence of reverse engineered programs, like the 100%. Alien reverse engineered programs. Like I would. Hey, if you want to tell me where they come from, what they look like, how they got here, let's do it. Let's talk about it. I would love to. And if I got to eat crow for the rest of my life, so be it. I don't care. I would welcome that crow all day, because that would be a hell of a lot more fun than the conversations, that are being had today. And that doesn't mean this conversation. I mean, just the UFO conversation as a whole, this whole, the grush rush, like as I like to label it. You know, this is what we're talking about. We're arguing about whether or not this guy's "trust me, bro" is credible. Not even credible. He's a credible person, but we can't tell if he's being lied to or if he just believes this shit. You know, and it's, to me, very telling that the one good thing that I think, also another good thing, because we've already named a couple good things that have come out of this, but another good thing is that I feel like the mainstream media, for the most part, has done a pretty good job of going, yeah, this guy Grush is who he says he is, but these are all stories. These are all secondhand stories. That he never saw the program, he never touched the material, he never was near the base or the people that actually worked on it. They're just stories from other people that he's retelling. And they didn't pick, thankfully it's not on 60 Minutes, at least not yet. But thankfully there wasn't a New York Times, op-ed. Thankfully, the Washington Post passed on it. Thankfully we found out all of the people that said, yeah, we're good on that. Thanks, but no thanks. That was reassuring. And to me, a huge eye opener. Oh, this guy is really, nobody wants to put this guy on air except for News Nation and the Debrief and Ross Coulthart, and anybody connected to that cabal of really weird UFO media. It's so strange.
And just to put this out there, if it turned out that everything Grush was saying was correct in the end and true, there would be no crow to eat for people like the Washington Post or Politico or you or I, right? Because there is no evidence to support the things that he's saying, right? And we can expand that to other things too. Like you said, if it turned out tomorrow that there really were some type of other life forms and non-human intelligence out there, and it was, here visiting this earth, and we had proof of it and pieces of it, that would be amazing. I would be thrilled about that, right? And there would be no shame in having properly scrutinized, right, the claims that didn't have any evidence to back them up. I don't have to be ashamed of that if it all turns out to be true. And I think that a lot of people use that to put that out there, and it's kind of, again, part of the skeptic smear, right? That we're locked in and for the ego and stuff. And it's not I'm just following the objective method, right? And if it turns out that there's all these things are true, that's fine. It still doesn't change the fact that there's nothing to support their truth today, right?
Yeah.
And nobody gets points for belief, as far as I'm concerned, right? And nobody gets them taken away, but it's certainly not what the objective goal is.
I know you were saying that you don't believe there's a psyop, but there are elements of this that feel really psyop-y, and that feel especially the sock puppets. The idea that you, on your public account, you espouse these beliefs and these moral lines in the sand that you'll never cross or that you'll always uphold. And then behind the scenes, you're getting in arguments and inciting, in some cases, really hateful or violent comments toward the person that is really questioning your narrative. There's the whole, just manipulating me, the way they did with the whole text messages and how they leaked it and how they, try shitty blackmail, as I always call it, but it's still blackmail. The idea that they give me this or I'm gonna do this, and if you don't do it or else kind of thing. There is an aspect of this where you've got, here we are with all of these values and we're complaining about felons, but yet we've got people who are accused and that have been taken to court for domestic abuse, and they're on your team. They've been in your house. They're making wellness checks on your behalf. why isn't anybody on that side calling out that behavior? Why? Because I know that if I had been arrested for domestic abuse, or if you have been arrested for domestic abuse, or Stephen Greenstreet or John Greenwald, if there was an actual arrest record and a journalist that reported on the story and files and records and paper trails and firings and movings of different area codes to different states. Like, if that stuff was in their background, my God, we would never be able to tweet again without 15, an endless amount of those comments reminding us of the worst moment of our life. And I'm not a fan of judging a person based off of maybe 15 really shitty seconds of their life where they snapped and became something that they are normally not. I can always leave room for forgiveness for people that have made those kind of mistakes in their life. I will never, if I wanted to today, I can remind that person every single day for the rest of my time on Twitter of their transgressions, of their mistake. That's not my style. That's not what I'm about, but God damn, if that wasn't me, how that would be used against me. And I think about that all the time, like, and that double standard, and the fact that these people that are doing this double standard and this kind of behavior are directly connected to people that have government contracts. Like, there is something really nefarious about this that feels a little bit more than just attacking naysayers.
Well, I think that there is, and just absolutely, just to touch on what you were saying, with the whole, criminality and thing. I do, we can go back to the whole Felon 5 stuff, and just to really wrap it up, Elizondo, called his scrutinizers, right? Felons. That's what he was calling them. He didn't call anybody by name, right? But that's just as bad because it could literally be anybody that he's talking about, right? So then by association, it's everybody, all of his scrutinizers, all of the skeptics, right? Now have that kind of like cloud over them, so to speak, right? But I think like something like 1 in 3 adults like have an arrest record, first of all, right? And like nobody's the worst moment of their life. Like nobody wants to be judged as that, right?
Right.
And even for claimants making claims, like nobody's credible 100% of the time. It just doesn't happen that way, right? And it really doesn't matter what their history is or what their credentials are. What matters is the evidence that they're presenting for it, right? Like somebody could be a stand-up person and never have any convictions and stuff. That doesn't mean that they're lying or incorrect. Like it just doesn't hold, and it's just very disingenuous and all around just very dirty, divisive deflection.
No, it's insanely dirty. It's like you've been arrested and charged, and sure, you got off. Luckily, you were a cop in that city, and it's no debate that the justice system definitely favors police officers when they tend to make big mistakes short of murder. So it's no surprise there. But this idea that this person is somehow on a moral higher ground is a joke. It's a fucking joke. It's despicable. Right. Like this idea that, like just attacking my friend, rather like putting his personal information out there and championing that and taking an influence of 20,000 people and saying, hey, go attack this person. Here's his name. And where did people get his last name from? Like who's giving out that person's last name? Why are they doing that? And so,
yeah,
like in moments like that, I don't mind sharing criminal arrest records of wife beating from your side. That's what's on your side. Actual arrest records. You guys want to point to blogs and things people said when they were stupid young kids. but nobody wants to point to the arrest records on your side, huh? Nobody wants to talk about the felons on your side, huh? No one wants to talk
And
about the fact that all of these stories, every single one of your beliefs are built on counterintelligence operatives, the United States Air Force, and our government. Every single one of your belief systems are built on that. It's like that pisses me off. And that's when I don't have an issue of going, you know what? It's time to tell everybody what I know about this person. And this is public information. This is not a dox. This is out there. And if you just do a little bit of your research, I'm just deciding to share it. Because I know if this was Stephen Greenstreet, I know if this was Steve Long, I know if this was Greenwald, or rather with this in their past, all of us would probably delete our account with the amount of harassment we would get.
Right. And for what? Because we're applying proper scrutiny and investigation and questions.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's dirty. And I just to come back to, I think, what was kind of the beginning of your question about, the PSYOP kind of angle, I guess.
Yeah.
And I kind of used that term broadly when I said government PSYOP, but I guess, those things that you're talking about, right? And these kinds of deceptive actions and underhanded dirty stuff that we're talking about, it certainly speaks to more than just attacking naysayers, right? It speaks to a very coordinated thing. And I think that there's value in that. I don't know that it extends to a top-down PSYOP that's literally being, run out of the government, or that Elizondo is operating on behalf of some type of operation in what he's doing, right?
Well, I mean, this exact same behavior was displayed with Gary Reed within the Pentagon, basically telling stories and making up stories about a Pentagon employee who was supposedly blocking the information to General Mattis. And so let's just make up lies about him. Let's do an Inspector General complaint on him and put him and let's throw him into the mud pit with us, essentially. That right there is sort of the blueprint for the microcosms and the transgressions that are happening on a much lower level within the Twitter community verse. But I feel like both of those tactics are the exact same. It's like, oh, you don't like what I'm saying, therefore I'm going to look up everything about you and find whatever I can to discredit you, and even some cases just make shit up, and just so people, because if you say the lie enough, if you call me a racist or misogynist or whatever enough, at some point it just becomes truth. And I feel like that's what this tactic is oh, let's call rather this, and we'll just keep saying it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We'll provide no proof. We'll just keep saying it. And anytime somebody has a question about it, we'll just say, oh, that guy, yeah, he did this, this, and this. You don't want to trust him, and nobody's gonna go, oh, usually people are just gonna say, oh, fuck, that's fucked up. Thanks for the heads up. Appreciate it. And I think maybe that's what happened in the Pentagon in a lot of ways, until they actually investigated it. I just hope that if that is the case, if they are, and maybe it's just, it sounds like a disgruntled employee and a disgruntled believer, and I don't know what the consequences for these actions are going to be, but goddamn, I hope there are some consequences, because I mean, I feel like real people's lives are being affected. I mean, now Rather is dealing with death threats like I had, and it's like, why? Because the Love and Light, Dan Zetterstrom, wanted to share his private information with his 20,000 followers and instigate this witch hunt of for what? because Ross Coulthart suggested that David Grush's answers were weird because he might be autistic, and then feeling guilty for someone in that position, like getting all of this information and going, gosh, I hope he wasn't manipulated, and then that being turned into you uh 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 discrediting people with autism, or somehow it's a knock on people with autism. Like, it's so crazy. And so now that's the thing. That's what we're going to run with. We're going to run with rather hates autistic people. Like, that's what we're running with. And that's what they're going to take to the bank. And the fact that it's being endorsed and stamp of approval by the Dan Zetterstrom and all of his colleagues around him is kind of gross. And I know that all of those colleagues were just chumming it up with Lou Elizondo over there across the pond, taking pictures at the bar with him and stuff. It's so plain as day that hero worship. It's literally they're dripping it. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
there's a real, and those body language experts that we discussed on the show here a couple weeks ago, like even they were like, there's an element of this that is really nefarious. And is it just somebody with a crazy belief system that is wreaking havoc within the government and also a subculture? Or is this a coordinated, planned thing? And if it is, why? To what end? To what end? And when does it stop? Does somebody have to get hurt? Does somebody genuinely have to get hurt before this changes, this inference, not only from government but from these influencers, these celebrities?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I don't know, but I do know that what you're just talking about here, and reframing the argument, right? And reframing proper scrutiny and proper investigation as hate, or as something that's improper. Just part of the business plan, it seems like, right? And
Yeah.
kind of bringing it back again, not so much psyop, but there are like psychological operations, so to speak, that like people are conducting, right? And they're conducting it against people. And I love the analogy of the gruntled ex-employee, gruntled employee. And there certainly is a coordinated group of people, right, that are furthering their own agendas, and they're doing so in government, in bureaucracy, and they're using the public and the media to subvert our bureaucracy, right? And these things aren't being addressed, of course, in the topic, but when we talk about what Congress needs to address and the things that need to be addressed, like those are at the top of my list, right? Like, we don't have any proof that the government's hiding any aliens, but we have all kinds of proof that very specific individuals, ex-government people, are using all kinds of means, including media deception and online, groups and trolling and puppet accounts and all kinds of deceptive tools to further their own agendas and to subvert our bureaucracy, right? And Gary Reed's a great example there. And these are the things in my mind that should be being looked at, because there's actual evidence for these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there definitely is. There's a trail of bodies as far as the proof is concerned. We got about 10 more minutes. I was going to say, anybody out there in the audience have a question for Steve Long, just throw it up there in all caps. I'm sorry if I missed any questions or anything like that in the chat. Just want to make sure I give my full attention to Steve. But is there anything we missed? I know it's only 2 hours. I mean, I could go on forever with you, but like, is there anything that maybe you want to discuss or we're curious about?
No.
Or
I could, like you said, I could. There's all. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No. That was my thing.
I could talk to you forever, man. There's all kinds of things I'd like to cover, right? But just to touch on what I was just speaking about real quick with the the disinformation or the subverting of the wheels of our bureaucracy and whatnot. Um, Gallagher, Representative Gallagher, last year during the UAP hearing, he was the person I think that brought up, what about disinformation? Are we going to address that? Um, and it's up for debate, what he was talking about exactly, because he also entered the Wilson Davis documents into
Right.
the record. So,
Well,
but when we talk about the disinfo, right? Like, we have provable examples of people like Elizondo and Gary Nolan and Travis Taylor, and just endless examples of people who have spread dis or misinformation, right? And it's
I
gotten to
mean,
the
Jacques
point where,
Vallée. Jacques
yeah,
Vallée with this new
sure.
fucking book. Like, that is pure bullshit. It's pure bullshit.
Yeah.
And he's still out here selling this book. Jacques Vallée. Like, everyone's on a grift now. It's kind of disheartening. But going back to Gallagher, I'm glad you brought him up, because I did listen to the I see your question here, Mr. Eon. I'll get to it right now. He did mention, and we're going to go over the Pat McAfee interview that he did a couple of days ago, because if people were really listening to what he was saying, I genuinely think he's on the fence about this. I think he's getting, and he told you exactly who he was talking to: Mellon, Lou, the pilots. So Fravor, definitely Dietrich. I think he's talking to Nolan. I think he's talking to former members of the UAPTF. I think he's talking to current members of the UAPTF. He's saying that I think he's more concerned about that it's adversarial than he is that it's alien. I think he's just using the alien thing to bring more attention to the issue that he wants to bring attention to. And again, we'll go over that whole discussion in the next week or so. And we've got Rather also coming up here on the first Tuesday of the month. But, I think Congressman Gallagher is open to the idea. But I also think, and he said in that interview, like, look, we're going to get to the bottom of this. like I want to get to the bottom of this. And if it turns out that it's just things that we're misunderstanding, or God forbid, Chinese, Russian tech, will alert the American people in the proper ways. But, essentially, if there's nothing there, we'll also tell the American people that there's nothing there. And that was really encouraging. But I don't know if the UFO community heard that, and because I have a feeling when he does find nothing, when they do report in a couple of years, whenever the dust settles on this thing, he's going to have to turn around and tell his base now that there's nothing there. And if you saw what was going on in Senator Gillibrand's comments, in the week or two following her silence on the revelations of David Grush, you could see the anger bubbling in her comments. Like, there is a group of folks that if you do not give them the alien bodies, the reverse engineered programs, the things that you inferred, I know you didn't promise them, but you sure as fuck inferred them. I think when you turn around and you say there's nothing here, there's gonna be a problem. I think it's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And it could be also that recipe for disaster manifests itself to harm, God forbid, me, God forbid, the people who are big voices of, like, hey, be careful, like, that's whole skeptical angle of, where's the proof? Like, I think that anger will manifest on someone that shouldn't be the receiving end of that anger. It's I like, because if you think that my freak out and my my coming to terms with this was bad, wait till you go through it. Just wait how angry you get and how duped you feel. Because that's how I feel. I feel duped, I feel angry, I feel lied to, I feel manipulated. And it's going to take some time to get over those feelings, and especially some of the relationships that were lost along the way, and how blatant people were just like, la 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 la, just fingers in their ears, closing their eyes, I can't hear or see anything. La, 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 la. Like, I'll never forget that. I know who you guys are. It's so easy to see you guys, but yeah, okay. So we've got a question for Mr. Eon. The Tic Tac was seen over training grounds. It's a UK project called Bright Cloud Plasma Decoy. Interesting. That's not a question, but have you heard of that? Or that
I
sounds
have not.
the probability over possibility. Let's break that down, right? Let's see if we can apply what we just talked about to this claim. The Tic Tac was seen over training grounds. It's a UK project called Bright Cloud Plasma Decoy. A plasma decoy. Not saying you're wrong, Mr. Eon, but what do you think, Steve, when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm skeptical. Obviously, I don't know what to think because it's not a lot of information there to go off of. So
maybe send one of us a link to some of that information, Mr. Eon. You've got Steve Long's Twitter handle there. I know he'll definitely take a look at it.
Yeah,
I'd like to take a look at it. That sounds interesting. I mean, I know for sure that David Fravor had the opinion that it was black tech. That's, I can't prove that. That's just my story. That's what my sources tell me. Since everybody loves to do, this is what my sources tell me. My sources tell me that David Fravor thought it was black tech. He knew it was black tech. So does Alex Dietrich. That's what my sources tell me. So what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, and Alex, thought that she had seen man-made tech at first. Apparently, she thought she was in the middle of a live fire test, and she thought it all the way back to the ship until she was assured that it was not. Somehow, and maybe just simply by being told it was not a live fire test. We don't know what that was, and she accepted that at face value. It sounds like, and that's what subordinates do in the chain of command, right? But just to go back, I just can't. I hope that people like Representative Gallagher and Gillibrand and others really do follow through with this, right? And if it turns out that these are just a bunch of claims that can't be substantiated at all, and there's nothing in line with what they're saying in the bowels of the government, and they've been assured, I really hope that they do follow through with exactly how we ended up here and what people did specifically, right? And we can go all the way back to the 2017 leak of DOD property, right? And no one's been prosecuted for that. Like it continues to go on with Jeremy Corbell.
Right.
All kinds of images leaked to him, apparently from the UAPTF, and shown to the whole world, right? And none of those are being prosecuted. And in a government that over classifies and prosecutes everything to the max, that's just not normal in my eyes, right? I mean, even just to deter from any type of future activity like that, the most minor leaks or breaches in classification and in confidentiality are prosecuted. The most minor ones, just to deter people from doing it.
Well, but that's what
I hope they follow through. I really do.
That's what I think feeds the smoke screen. I think they're not prosecuting those things because they want those things out there. They want those things out there. So when people look up in the sky and they do see something triangle shaped, they go, "Oh my God, alien!" instead of, "Oh my God, that's a cool new Air Force plane." Or "Oh my God, wow, that's human tech." I think.
Well, I think that there's a lot of that goes into that.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree.
And
I just want to, and I think that I do agree there completely, right? And I think there's just also a lot that goes into it that's with publicity and just public perception, like you were talking about. Like there's all kinds of, it's a win-win for politicians to get behind the government may be hiding UFOs, and we may need to do something about it with our national security to make our skies safer. That's a win-win, right? No matter what. There's not, and there's all kinds of people, probably like maybe 25% or more of Americans that probably believe that, or at least believe in extraterrestrial life and may get behind that.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of win-win to like trying to prosecute Lou Elizondo for leaking videos 5 years later, right? And
Right.
I can see a lot of people walking away from this, just like we have before, and saying, look, like there's just no proof of that. We've checked it all. We've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And we don't know what people are seeing, but there's nothing, being hidden by the government that we can find. And I just feel like it's just going to stop there and not, I don't know, again, and this is just, we're just hashing out beliefs here and possibilities and stuff like that. And there's certainly an element of the government and the military that loves the fact that the ambiguity of UFOs is there and what it can represent, and the opportunities that it represents for them to hide black tech and to just cause confusion and uncertainty amongst our adversaries, right?
Well,
But I also think that there's a lot of people who would just rather not get that stuff out into the open or do anything about it, simply for reasons of self-preservation and embarrassment, and just not wanting to dig up stuff that just isn't going to look good, and there's just no win for it politically. And I don't have a lot of hope that these things are going to be called to account for, to be honest with you.
Well, I think there will be. I think once the dust does settle, if Congress doesn't look back and say, "Oh my God, how did we get here?" I think somebody independent of Congress will definitely look back and go, "Okay, let's look at this timeline and how did we waste all this money?" Because there will be a question at some point of, "Oh my God, how did we spend $100 million on this that produced absolutely nothing?" And who were the players? Who were the people that influenced the Congress members? What were they showing them? How were they able to leak that? And I think you're right. I think enough time will pass where nobody gets in trouble, but at least maybe lessons are learned for the next time, so this doesn't happen to Congress again. Because to be fair, it hasn't happened to Congress. Not this anyway. Like, this hasn't happened on a congressional level where they're looking into UFOs in a serious way since the late 60s,
Yeah.
so it makes, I can understand why no one would get in real big trouble, but I agree. I think people should, especially Jeremy Corbell. Like, if he's got influence in Congress, he should be called up to Congress. If he's leaking military footage, he should be called into Congress and asked how he got it. He should be bringing Bob Lazar. He should be screaming to want to go to Congress, actually. Which is why I made my video. But M says, has anybody been listening to Chris Lito lately? He drank the Kool-Aid big time. He's gone full Greer. Agreed. And that's also like, just like, I feel like, to me, that's one of the saddest sort of, like, if I've done a 180, Chris Lito's done a 180.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're on opposite ends of the revolving door right now. I'm going out of the rabbit hole and he's going right into it. I mean, yeah, he's claiming Greer's right, Elizondo's right. They've been hiding tech for 80 years. They've been back engineering. People are cowards. We're going to put names on the blockchain, like full bore conspiracy theorist now. I mean, he might as well wear a tin hat to every single episode he does. And that's an F-16 fighter pilot, retired. That's what this subject has done to him. What you would think is a pretty intelligent guy. And when he first came on the scene was really, I loved watching him and Mick West debate the Tic Tac video, debate, the nuances of all three of those videos, even though he ended up being wrong every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I enjoyed the debate for the fact that there was a lot of, misconceptions that he was propagating that Mick was able to address.
Right.
But I've never been personally, impressed with Chris Lito. I think that he's been completely biased and one-sided from the beginning. I mean, this is a guy whose very first video was a debunk Miss West debunk video, right?
Right.
I mean, not for his very first videos, to be fair, were NFT videos. And then during the 21, UAPTF buildup, he did a a Mick West debunk video that kind of went viral, and he
Yeah.
went from getting a couple hundred views to getting tens of thousands of views in one video, and he
Right.
just stuck with the UFO stuff and he never looked back. And I
Right.
think that kind of encapsulates what he's doing and what he's here for to begin with. And I'm not saying that I know his heart and his beliefs, but he certainly seems to have a lot of motives that have things to do with publicity and money and projects of his. And
Well, I know his
I just
channel
think that he's playing
was
a part, to be honest with you.
well, his channel was a challenge to himself. He was basically at home, like not doing anything really, and it was a bet with his kids. His kids were like, "Bet you can't start a YouTube channel." He's like, "I bet I can." And then yeah, he started exploring with the NFTs because he felt like that was going to be something maybe he could talk about. He was knowledgeable about, and then yeah, the UFO thing just kind of popped into his lap because that's his wheelhouse. He's an F-16 fighter pilot. He knows those instruments. He's like, "Hey, I could provide some insight on this," and boom, in one
But he
video,
couldn't.
like you said, in one video, like you said. I mean, he was, but I'm saying, like, when I say insight to this, I mean from a
Oh yeah,
believer's
no, I agree,
perspective.
man.
From a believer's perspective, anytime someone with the bona fides of Chris Lato comes into the conversation, they're immediately latched onto. The hooks are put in, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is our credibility right here." That's what he is,
Yep.
because he flew that plane, because he dropped those bombs, because he had the responsibility that he had. Therefore, he is infallible. He cannot be wrong, and his bona fides are a lot more qualified than that of a video game programmer when it comes to this discussion in our eyes. Even though
Right.
when the
You would
video game
think.
programmer, if you're being objective, and even at our most belief, we sided with Mick West every time. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I love you, Chris, but Mick's right. Like, Mick's right on this. Um, but yeah, I mean, Lord Ludacris with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, Steve.
Luda.
Hypothetical list of who may have testified to Congress. I asked this after Comer, which just happened today, said that they had to replace witnesses due to background checks. Which I had a really funny conversation with Green Street today. We got a real kick out of that. That was hilarious. But yeah, what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I imagine that if we were to have a list of the people that testified to Congress, it would be a mix of people we've never heard of and people that we know very well, I would imagine.
I
Yeah.
have a feeling that it's going to be a lot of people we've already heard from. I think, don't be
Yeah.
shocked if you get Angeli. Don't be shocked if you get whoever Richard Budd is. I guess maybe we'll find out. Don't be shocked if you get a Cahill and an Alex Dietrich and a David Fravor again. Don't be shocked if you get Christopher Mellon. Don't be shocked if you get Dr. Travis Taylor. Don't be shocked if you get a couple of people in the same vein as Grush. But I don't think. I mean, yeah, already they're already having issues doing background checks on some of these people that are coming in. I don't be shocked if it's Robert Salas. Have a feeling they're gonna be like, we talked to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. We'll see. I mean, we're gonna get a congressional hearing. Let's see what happens in this congressional hearing. But I would say, just like with Grush, be very, very careful of the claims. For me, my go-to is, what is Mick West saying? What is Mick West saying? Like, what's his thoughts on this? And if he's impressed, then I'll start looking into it. That's, I guess, my standard for me now. Is that's the first place I go. All right, what's Mick saying? But I mean, yeah. Any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I like Mick West a lot. I do.
Yeah. I mean, fair to say he's probably solved more cases than anybody in this entire field.
Yeah, I think that the topic probably doesn't realize, most people, how lucky we are to have people like Mick West or John Greenwald and many others interested and involved in this topic, right? Um, people say that they want, intelligent, accredited people looking into the topic, people with the experience and with the smarts and with the drive and the interest. Oftentimes I feel like they just want people that are going to reinforce that. But there's a few people that like that, we're really lucky to have them in the topic. And what was I just going to say? Darn. So sorry.
No. You were talking about Mick West and have them being lucky to have him in the topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I started
No,
the music there. That was the cue to the show's going to end a little bit here in a couple
that's
minutes.
okay. No,
I hope
no,
that didn't throw
it
you
was
off.
all
But I think I think we're laying down the same pipe here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Long, man, this was a great conversation.
I had a great time, man. Thank you for having me.
This was a lot of fun. Don't be a stranger around here. I'd love to have you back and just join us in any regular conversations. Anytime you feel like you want to jump in, just hit me up in a DM and I will send you the link, man. Because we could always use your more level-headed behavior. I tend to get a little angrier. I'm angry and I make fun of shit. That's my move. Not angry. I'd say more sarcastic than angry. At this point, it's just hilarious. A lot of this stuff. If I can't sit here and laugh at it, I'd go crazy. And it is funny, especially when we've got some really, really wonderful creative people out there like a Cosmic Judas to make us laugh. But before you get out of here, what would you like to tell the people? Where can they find your musings, I guess?
Yeah, you can catch me right now on Twitter at UAP or SAP. That's where I'm at. I got some other things in the chamber that I'll be doing soon, but that's where I share right now. But yeah, and just in closing, the video that you did, it was probably like an hour long when you first, let the UCR go and you had, a change and you did a video out there where you really addressed a lot of things and a lot of people in specifics. It's probably like 45 minutes long. And it was just amazing. It was better than I probably ever have put anything ever and ever will. You really nailed a lot of the stuff, and it was complete with all the experience and hard work that came along with really having to go through the experience that you went through. And I just thought that was amazing, man. You do a really good job. You're certainly just not somebody who just gets mad and talks about some stuff. You really have a lot to offer, and I appreciate that you're sticking around again to really do this a second time around publicly, despite all the negative blowbacks that you're having for it. And I appreciate you while you're here. Other than that, thanks for having me, man. I'd love to do it again anytime.
Dude, anytime. Yeah, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. Genuinely. I usually hate comments like that because I always get very self-conscious, but I appreciate it. I do appreciate when people were actually able to listen to what I said and go, fuck, I could see why this guy's pissed off. I understand 100%. And if it was me, I'd be just as upset. I'm more perplexed at the people that are not upset. The people that, especially the people like my producer, Alex Garcia, like he refuses to answer me on Twitter now. Like the guy had a front row seat to what happened to our show. Wow. And he's out here pushing Elizondo's bullshit and Grush's bullshit. And it's just so fucking insulting. So it's nice to hear when people are like, hey, yeah, man, your rage is justified. You have a right to be pissed off. I think I'm a little more pissed off than rather. And I come off a lot more emotional. First of all, I'm Latin, so I mean, like the emotion always pours out of me. But I had a belief, man. I really, really, that my experience was so visceral for me, and I still hold on to it. And in a way, I still want answers. And if it's a weather phenomenon, then it's a weather phenomenon. But
yes,
I'm willing to accept whatever it is or whatever it isn't. But I'm definitely not about to use my experience as proof. I've never done that. I'll never do that. And that's, I think, a big problem with this community is everybody's experience is somehow fucking proof, and it's not. Your experience is not proof. I know that sucks to hear, but it's not. It's a data point, but it's not fucking proof.
Yes.
But dude, thank you for this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Guys, check out Steve Long. Go subscribe or follow him on Twitter, because anytime news breaks, he's always got a really great perspective on it and nuance. So stick around for a couple minutes, Steve, because I got a story to tell you behind the scenes that I think will be coming public soon. I just don't want to burst the bubble. There's so many shows we're doing here, I hope in the next week or two. So guys, ring the bell if you haven't. We've got a lot to talk about on this show.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, especially when Rather comes. Man, we're going to have a lot to talk about when Rather's here, because there have been some transgressions that cannot be ignored. With that said, you guys, appreciate you guys hanging out, sticking with us. I'm going to switch cameras here. I'm going to mute you, Steve, but please stick around.
All right.
And say goodbye to everybody. You guys, this was a killer show. We're going to have Steve around a lot more. You know, these are the conversations I think that are going to be valuable going forward. You know, being able to break down, you know, basically do UCR just opposite. Making sure that we're really having a genuinely hard-hitting murder board conversation on the phenomenon, and questioning people and holding their feet to the hottest fucking fire that we can. Like, that's all we're gonna do from now until the end of this channel. So I hope you guys are here for it. I want you guys to be here for it. If you are, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you could donate. Obviously, that helps us do more shows. That helps us stay here. Thank you for the $5 donation today. Really appreciate it. You guys, I'm like falling in love with this channel all over again. And it's conversations like this that help that. And it's all of the support that you guys are giving out there. And man, we've been through a lot of shit here as a team in the last week. And you guys out there have been awesome in backing us up and supporting us and separating the wheat from the chaff as far as what are facts and what's bullshit and who people really are versus what people say they are. So with that said, I love you all. Have a killer weekend. Enjoy your 4th of July. I'm sure we'll be coming at with some shows here very, very shortly. So stay tuned, ring the bell. Until next time, I love you all. Peace. Real quick, before I get out of here, I just want to give love to everyone in the chat. Michael Huntington, Eventide, Simon Fly, Yoshi, Pat Calabria, Not Sure, Just Zoot, Zemog, Mega Briar Patch, let's see here, M, Yoshi. If I say your name twice, lucky you. Cameron T, thank you so much for being here. Michael Witt, thank you so damn much. No, I'm missing a couple here. We're gonna get to Cookie Monster. Thank you for being here. Michael Wade. Not sure if I said your name. Not sure. Thank you for being here. Chris Johansson. Torso. Let's see here. Cameron T. Did I already say Cameron T? Michael Wade, definitely. Alright, I think I got everyone. If I didn't get you, Lord Ludacris. Again, thank you for the $5 donation. Michael Huntington. You guys are the best. I swear to God, you guys are the best. Jason Brown, thank you for the question. And by the way, Steve, he DM'd you on Twitter, or Mr. Eon did. He sent you the Discord PM with links, so look out for that, Steve. Let's see here. I think we got everyone. All right. Oh, Tina from the East Coast. East Coast Tina. Tina Tomaszewski's. Thank